and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Today we're joined by Dr. Eoin McNamara. He's a research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs to discuss the peace talks in Istanbul between Ukraine and Russia, which started and ended an hour later today. As Ukraine's bold drone strikes deep inside Russia destroyed a large portion of Putin's bomber fleet, questions arise over whether diplomacy can gain traction amid the intensifying conflict. Eoin, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Great to have you. Okay, so let's start with this 1 hour long peace talks. Bit of a misnomer, isn't it? Peace talks in 1 hour? Yeah,
it's hard to see how much they could have gotten through in that very short space of time.
Well, I mean, they exchanged memoranda about exchanging prisoners, and Moscow's proposed a 2 to 3 day ceasefire. Let's start with the prisoners and the wounded, and also Ukraine has asked for children back, yes? Is this going to go ahead, do you think? I mean, the Russians kidnapped the children for a reason. Are they going to give them back so easily?
No, I don't think so. I think that will be an uphill battle, but of course, Ukraine is well within their rights, and it's of course the moral and just thing to do to ask for these children back, to repatriate them to their homeland. Many of these children have lost so much, lost one parent, lost two parents, lost many relatives, and their suffering has been immense. So it's very important that Ukraine stands up for their rights and pushes Russia to the brink, pressures Russia, stigmatizes Russia for this crime, that we all don't forget about it and we don't give up, and Ukraine doesn't give up on these children.
Well, I mean, Putin's already been indicted by the International Criminal Court for the kidnap of the children. Let's see where that leads. Now, they're all also exchanging prisoners of war and the wounded, the largest exchange thus far. Tell us what's going on there. I mean, again, why aren't they just hanging on to these guys?
Well, of course, we're back into justice, we're back into morals, and we're back into looking after your people, looking after people that have sacrificed so much in the fight against Russian aggression from the Ukrainian side, of course. So it's always important for a country to be loyal to its citizens that have given up and have sacrificed so much, and not just these citizens, their families as well, their relatives as well. So that's the most important thing, that Ukraine stands by its people. The moral, and it's the just thing to do. But also some of these prisoners of war that haven't become combat effective, they can also help. I'm sure they're great patriots, having suffered so much for the cause of Ukraine. But the ones that haven't become combat effective, I'm sure many of them will join the fight and will lend their courage and will lend their expertise to the fight as it progresses into the future too. So getting back experienced veterans is very important on many fronts.
Understood. Now, Moscow's proposing a 2 or 3 day ceasefire, but only in certain areas. I mean, that sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? A bit dubious. What's behind that, in your opinion?
They're playing lots of games, the Russians. There's lots of optics, the information space, the propaganda war, that they want to be seen to those that sympathize within the West, or those that advocate for Russia in the West, that they want to be seen as the peacemaker, as the broker here, and it's the Ukrainians pushing back against that. And of course, these tactics have worked. They have had an impact on the Trump administration in the past. Some within the Trump administration have taken the Russian side. So they're always playing these little games, psychological. The Russians are very, very psychological, trying to get into the head of Ukrainian negotiators. But my suspicion is, and I think it's a well justified one, that the Ukrainians know how they work, and they won't give anything in easy, or they won't fall into any pitfalls or any big traps.
Right. I was just curious as to why only in certain areas, and it did strike me that perhaps they just wanted to reinforce their defences there in the 2 to 3 days, ceasefire. But you don't think the Ukrainians are going to agree to this?
I wouldn't think so. They'll have to go back and assess what it means for them strategically. But you could be correct, because of course the events of the last few days with Ukraine's defensive attacks on Russia, these have been seismically telling in terms of the war. 7 billion worth of damage. Some are calculating it at, and a large share of Russia's bomber fleet.
I want to come to that in just a second, Eoin. But before we get to that, you mentioned Donald Trump. Now, I think even Donald Trump is getting to the end of his tether with Putin, but he's been quiet in the last few days. What do you think is going on in his head?
Well, there's many things going on in the head of Donald Trump, and there's many other policy issues on the table for him. I think his attention span is short, and his patience is also short on these issues. He's got other issues with tariffs, with China, some domestic political issue, things like that. And probably like everybody else, he's taking briefings from his intelligence services on the events in the last few days, and seeking advice, hopefully, and listening to some of the smart people around him, giving him scenarios for how these events might play out on these peace talks, and for what the US position should be. We hope to support a just and lasting peace that benefits Ukraine.
Yes. Well, of course, we should be watching that closely. Now, going to the strike on Russia's strategic bomber fleet, the Ukrainian military intelligence say 41 planes were struck by drones, Ukrainian drones, over 2,000 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken, from the Ukrainian border. Now, talk us through that operation.
Well, it was a very sophisticated operation. We've seen throughout the war in Ukraine how drones, relatively cheap to manufacturers, drones have transformed this war, and it was a masterful use in terms of Ukrainian security planners, how they utilized deception. They loaded up these drones into wooden boxes onto trucks and drove them onto Russian territory, and the Russians didn't see it coming, and as I say, a large share of their bomber fleet wiped out, and some estimate from 5 to 7 billion worth of damage done in one operation. So just a masterful use of modern warfare on Ukraine. Of course, there will be ramifications for this now. We've seen how much relatively cheap drone systems, how much damage they can cause, and how smartly they can be utilized. So I'm sure, like everything else in warfare, this will be imitated and copied. So we need to think of the new rules of the game, how we regulate this type of warfare going forward into the future. But that is not the concern in the short term. The short term victory for Ukraine is that this has been an operation well fought.
Understood. Now, just very, very quickly, if you would, Eoin, two things. The first is, how difficult is it going to be for Russia to replace those damaged or destroyed aircraft?
It's going to be very difficult to replace them. That these bombers take a long time to engineer, and they are very, very costly. So if you can take out 5 to 7 billion worth of them with drone systems that might only be worth a few million, 10 million, maybe a bit more, 20, 25, 30 million, then that's a very good bang for your buck, as they say. And it just goes to show how cheap drone systems, as I've said, are transforming warfare in the modern world.
Indeed, and the innovative use of them by the Ukrainians over the course of this war, I think, has been an eye-opener for many. And finally, I mean, this has left President Putin with egg on his face. Has it influenced his attitude towards the war? Has it hardened it? Has it brought him closer to the negotiating table? And how secure is his position at home after this?
I think it has brought him closer to the negotiating table. I would say that he is furious in Moscow right now, furious with his generals and furious with those in charge of Russian intelligence and of air defense, and he's really licking his wounds. That this has been a big operation one for Ukraine. At the same time, he probably thinks by hook or by crook he will achieve his objectives in Ukraine, which is to take Ukraine fully into the Russian sphere of influence, either by military means or by negotiating a deal that's very much a peace that's very much in his favor in Ukraine, right, if Ukraine is weak and if the West is weak. But this attack, I think the timing of it is excellent as we think of it in terms of Ukraine's advantage. So understood. I think the ball is more in Ukraine's court now.
So they've got the advantage at the moment.
Negotiations.
Dr. Eoin McNamara, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.